that they face, the opportunities for nonprofits, and will candidly speak to the false assumptions that he made and the takeaways after being on the job for a couple of years. His topic is titled, What I've Learned, Taking the Leap for Profit Leadership to Nonprofit Leadership. Let's welcome our guest, Bryan Neider. Thank you.
At any time, feel free to interrupt, ask questions, and from the way we got started this morning, I feel that nobody is hesitant to interrupt. So please go for it. So it's a pleasure to be here. So I'm going to go quickly sort of in the overview of my career, but going from for-profit and tech for more than 30 years in a nonprofit has been one of the most interesting, challenging, and rewarding experiences of my life. So I'm going to share with you what I've learned over that time, so kind of here's what we're going to go through. So career, I had an MBA in finance from Cal State East Bay. I was a history major from Santa Clara University. I knew I'd go back to school to get a business degree and ultimately go into it. I worked at Deloitte, CPA and public accounting. And then early on in the 80s, I loved gaming. And I will admit now, though I didn't admit to my wife at the time, I bought an early Apple computer and a printer so I could play games, but I told her it was to do tax returns and make money on the side. The real motivation was for playing games. And so I ended up going to a client of mine, which is called Data East in San Jose, and it was a game manufacturer. They made arcade, they made pinball, and at the one time they were the only company in the US that had a #1 game in pinball, arcade, PC, and on at that time, Nintendo. And from there, I was hired away to go to a little company called Electronic Arts. And at that time, in 1989, it was a $63 million company. When I started, they didn't tell me this in an interview, but Bank of America had pulled our line of credit. So my job when I got there was to manage cash flow, make sure vendors kept supporting us and making payroll, getting ready for the initial public offering about a year later. I was at EA for about 26 years. And while I was there, I became a board member of Gatepath. So that was where my relationship with Gatepath started, was actually there at EA being on the board. And EA was an earlier employer of the Gatepath clients. I'll tell you a little bit more about Gatepath in a minute. Different nonprofit organizations been involved a lot here in the Bay Area, both in school. My very first volunteer event was actually Special Olympics. A friend of mine, she was in the School of Education and Psychology and was in special education, and she got a bunch of us to help coach basketball teams. Yes, even at 5'6", I still was able to coach a basketball team for the Special Olympics. So Gatepath. Gatepath is going to be 99 years old in June. So we're a 98-year-old organization right now. We're about a $16 million nonprofit, and in the world of nonprofits, that is a very large nonprofit. So that puts us in about the top 3% nationally in terms of size. One of the larger here in the Bay Area. We have over 200 staff, numerous volunteers. Michelle is one of our volunteers. We have 8 peninsula locations. Daly City on down to actually one in Mountain View, which is Santa Clara County, Coastside, East Palo Alto, 3 sites in Burlingame, South City, I'm probably Sunnyvale. So we're located around basically San Mateo County. Our relationship actually goes back to our founding in around 1920 in a relationship with the creation of the Burlingame Rotary Club. And we've always had, our executive director has always been a member of the Burlingame Rotary. I'm happy to say that I will become a member of Burlingame Rotary on like February 12th or whenever that meeting is. My dad is a former Rotarian, and former past president at the Los Gatos Club. So I'm proud to be joining the Rotary, coming up here officially in about 2.5 weeks. We serve over 1,000 folks every day. We offer adult-based programs, site-based, community-based, and employment programs. We have 2 inclusive preschools, which means the schools are roughly 70%, 80% kids that are on a typical track, and about 20 to 30% kids that have a developmental delay or disability. We have over 40 therapists serving children with different delays or disabilities. And we have an early intervention program that we operate throughout the entire county. We're the main provider of that for determining if a child has a delay or disability, and then our therapists go in to help with that. So again, about 1,000 folks every day. One of them is a family resource center to provide resources to family on how to navigate California's system of service and care for individuals with developmental disabilities. This is our mission, vision, and values. We did this work about not quite 3 years ago, around when I first started, to sort of reground ourselves about what our mission and goals are. This was actually a very big deal because, you know, in the nonprofit space, sometimes because we're struggling for resources, we wanted to really understand what is our mission. And one of the things we came to is that if we aren't the best provider of a particular service, our job is to care for the people that we serve and make sure they get access to the best services available. And that forces us to be thinking about everything that we offer, and maybe some programs not provide, but actually help support another nonprofit for them to provide it because they're better skilled, to have more focus in that area. So that was really maybe a subtle piece, but very important for us to actually come and agree that that's what we are all about, is serving the families, children, and adults that we care about. Did you, question?
No.
Just getting your glasses, okay. So here are some of our community partners. So we have clients working in all sorts of locations, all sorts of businesses, and we're really proud of that relationship, and also some volunteer organizations. So Sarah High School's volunteered to support our group, Notre Dame, all sorts of schools, Hillsdale High School. So we have a very broad support from the community overall, which is fantastic.
Can you elaborate on that? What does the partnership look like?
So what we had, so with Sarah High School, it was sort of a buddy program. And we have one that's going on right now with the Boys and Girls Club of the Peninsula. And we have a film class that we put together. So in the film class for young adults, primarily on the autism spectrum, with their peers, are going in and creating films. They're doing the script writing, they're doing the green screen, doing the editing. And so that peer relationship is so critical for everyone. And that's the kind of partnerships that we have, in particular with Sarah and the Boys and Girls Club, is that. Yeah. And a lot of corporations donate time. I don't know if we worked with Levi, but certainly Genentech and Electronic Arts and all sorts of other organizations come in to help us out with different programs. Interview skills. So for all of these employers, we have companies that come in and will help coach our participants on preparing for interviews, which is great. So all sorts of different things. There are many ways to help, and if anybody's interested, I'm happy to give you our contact information if you're interested. And Michelle, feel free to share your experience in volunteering in Daly City.
Okay, I will when you're ready.
So this is kind of the going into the nonprofit stuff. It's sort of, this is where you know, nonprofits are all stretched being in the Bay Area, and you can see here involves you know, the desire to say, just give us the money. We need to do the work, right? And so sometimes that means we're not as good listeners of really what the organization that's looking to donate or provide volunteers, what they're really trying to accomplish as well.
Yeah.
So one thing that we've tried to do over time is spend a lot more energy understanding the motivation needs of either the individual or the organization we're going to partner with, and how we can help meet that. So here's some things that we face in the Bay Area. Obviously, cost of housing, talent and wage competition, flat or declining state funding. Not very well-known fact, but the developmental disability service sector took enormous cuts in the Great Recession, huge hits to the funding from the state of California. It has not been replaced. Out of Governor Newsom's budget this year, out of all the health and human services area that they're adding funding to, ours is the only area that did not get an increase. The only area. In fact, we've been asked to put in furlough days, which costs our organization $80,000. So we're required to pay staff, but not actually get any revenue to provide the care. And this has been going on for over 20 years. I did an op-ed piece that got picked up by the Chronicle. It's a very sad state of affairs for our service area. And part of it is, I think, just it's a lot of politics in the size of the constituents who we serve. We're not as big of a population, and maybe some other areas get more attention in the state assembly. So we're hopeful that the state, as we get more time to champion our cause, that they'll start to return some funding. The only increase we got under Governor Brown came via a managed care tax that they said the only way he's going to fund an increase was by a separate tax that went to healthcare providers. So that was 2 years ago. And so this is what we're wrestling with. We're wrestling with essentially flat funding. At the same time, wages are going up, rent is going up, and we have a big challenge. So when I first started, I went through sort of outlining this for staff, and you can see what the funding gap looks like in California. By the way, we're 50th out of 50 states in per capita funding. 50th for developmental disabilities. Pretty astonishing. And so what I told our staff at the time, after going through this and kind of getting a sense of it, is, there's not going to be a white knight that's going to write in and save us. We've got to find a way to be creative about how we manage this environment, being in the Bay Area, and I think we've done a very remarkable job in doing that. We've had a very supportive board, and I'm happy to say that whenever I've had a chance to tell our story, people are willing to help with time, talent, or treasure to help us fulfill our mission to serve the people and family we care about. And so I think we're sort of uniquely positioned to be doing that. There are a lot of opportunities, and this is where the creative, yes?
You asked for questions. So,
Yes.
Aren't the public schools required to provide educational services to children of any and all disabilities?
They are. So the way the California, that's a great question. The way the California system works is essentially 0 to 5. Individuals diagnosed with a developmental disability or delay are funded by the state. So at pre-K, there's a toss-up, is it the state or the school district? And school districts may provide it, or they may contract with someone like us. When children age out of the system at age 22, they then become part of the state system. And so individual school districts will contract with us. For example, we serve 9 school districts with therapists. And in that, we have another funding mechanism, which is we have to negotiate with every school district. So some schools do it, some schools don't. They use us to provide services. So it's a very complicated funding system. Needless to say, we are usually, having to scrape in terms of how we manage those contracts. One of the things that we did in this is some nonprofits will chase a contract to have the revenue even though they lose money. I said, we're not going to do that. That is not going to work. If we can't actually keep the lights on, we can't just be chasing revenue. Otherwise, ultimately, keep going into a downward spiral. So, we've made a lot of changes in how we do that stuff, so I'm happy to say we're in good shape for that, but it is still a challenge. There are expanding opportunities for collaboration, partnering with local universities, freely sharing innovative ideas, creating compelling opportunities for donors. So we had our very first grant from a group that you may have heard of, the Correct Foundation. So the Correct Foundation is in San Francisco. We provide educational support. We were made an introduction because it's by invitation only. We shared with them what we do. They said, we've never provided funding for the intellectual developmental disabilities community. We're sort of intrigued by this. We said we would like to do is work on a program that helps kids transition from the school system into adulthood and employment and build a curriculum specifically set for that. And they were generous and helped us with a seed grant of over $50,000 to get started in building that curriculum. Because that age area is very tough. So again, that's being creative and finding something that the donor is interested in, which is their mission to serve education, and us finding a way to make that work. New staffing models, expanding internships, engaging in local talent for nonprofit boards. So these are all things that we have done that are really creative, and sort of when you stop being a victim and start looking for ways to solve problems, it changes the opportunities that you're presented with. And that's where I'm really proud of the work our staff have done. When we're faced with kind of these economic challenges, yes, we have to be aware of them, but what can we do to manage them forward? So we now have over roughly 22 interns that come in the summer. And now we have interns year-round, which is fantastic. Great coming out of school, motivated and excited to be helping us. Really good partnership with NDNU right down the way. Partnership with San Francisco State. Santa Clara University is doing some pro bono marketing for us for our preschools, which is fantastic because they're building a portfolio when they graduate, and we're getting great marketing support. So some things like that that we're doing that have been incredibly helpful. So reality leaves a lot to the imagination. I thought being on the board that I knew what it was all about. It is far different jumping in from being at the board into the day-to-day management. So a little bit about some of the contrasting environments. High tech, so I was at Electronic Arts for about, like I said, almost 30 years, from $63 million to about $5 million. My last role at the company was managing global operational services, and prior to that, CEO for all of development. So roughly 5,000 people around the world writing code, marketing, managing that, and then moving into a local nonprofit. And so, having a strong competitive desire to win, driven by a mission and the desire to do good. Very similar drives. Teams and talent are key to creative and competitiveness. Teams and talent are key to delivering quality social services. Accessible capital, challenging funding models. Difference there. Markets determine viable pricing and cost structures, right? The market drives in a for-market way what you can do and what you can charge for things. There's limited market mechanisms in the nonprofit space, right? Consolidation, mergers, and things like that are very challenging. In a for-profit world, they happen almost automatically, so markets forcing that to happen. Shareholders are forcing it. When you're driven by a mission, it's not, you don't have that same mechanism to create maybe market efficiency. Ability to attract and retain talent. It's very tough to stay competitive in attracting and retaining talent here in the Bay Area. I'll give you one other little story about the way that we're funded. So we're funded by the state. There are groups that provide housing support and day living programs for adults. We don't provide that services. They changed the minimum wage law. The reimbursement rate from the state did not accommodate the change in the minimum wage, nor did it account for the living wage ordinances that in some cities are higher than the minimum wage. So the state had to go pass a special law just to keep funding for people that were providing services for 24-hour care and living arrangements in our service center. I mean, it just shows you how out of sync that was. So these folks are being paid, having to pay more, but not getting anything more from the state to do that. So that's where it gets tough to stay competitive and things like that if we're always playing catch-up. So here's some stereotypes I think a lot of us have, and you don't have to raise your hand if you've had some of these. Working for a nonprofit, you're a saint, and you've taken a vow of poverty, right? And they're do-gooders who don't really understand, how the real world works, right? Some stereotypes that I think that are out there. Likewise, I think a lot of nonprofits feel this is the corporate world. All you care about is money and power, and you're flying on corporate jets. You have all the money in the world. You don't care about the little people, right? Pretty extreme, but there's probably some things in there that maybe we've all been a little bit guilty of. And my taking the leap was, I thought that the board provided plenty of insights that I needed what the day-to-day job was. The work was not going to be quite as demanding as what I had been doing. Fundraising involved just setting a big goal, and the money will roll in, and everybody's going to open their checkbook and write you a big fat donation. The government does most of what we need. There's just a lot of waste in government, and everything's fine. People management skills are easily transferable from one environment to the next, and it's all about the mission. There's no such thing as office politics. There you go. That was, yes. We all know how to spell assume. So first 100 days, I'm diving in using sort of my old corporate tool chest. And I did a market analysis looking at sort of all the nonprofits, all the 990s in our sector in the Bay Area, or at least in the peninsula. Engaged with Taproot, which is sort of a consulting group that takes people out of the corporate world to go in and do volunteer analysis for nonprofits. Stanford has a ACT, which is Graduate School of Business, grads that go do volunteer work, and looking at M&A and collaboration opportunities with other nonprofits. We revised our financial reporting and measures, empowering managers to own their own business. And my tone and vocabulary is probably more around the business orientation than actually our mission. So there you go. That certainly is not a prescription for, and this is, of course, a selfie that I took at the time when I was doing that. You know, on reflection, I didn't dedicate enough time to getting to know the people because I was too focused on the doing. And mergers are not about improving operations, though that is a byproduct. It's about alignment of the mission. And it's a much more soft touch skill that if you don't have that, you're not going to get to where you want to go as a nonprofit. The need for investment in staff development, which we made a big change and put a lot more resource into investing and developing our staff. To get results, EQ is as important, if not more important than IQ. Great ideas will fall apart if you don't have buy-in. And so understanding where people are at and making sure that that is considered in how we roll things out became and is always important, but I probably underestimated it coming from more of a hierarchical kind of command structure, if you will, into a nonprofit. You have to build collaboration and support. And understanding the social contract in nonprofits. You know, it's, people are working because they love the mission. They know that they're not paid as well as what they could get in the private sector. And there are things that you need to accommodate for that because people are making trade-offs. Either they've come back to a second career or they want to do it while their kids are in school or whatever it might be. You have to put that into the whole equation and respect that because they've made those trade-offs to go do the work that we're doing. So re-engaging, spending a lot more time with teams, sharing a lot more information, and understanding what they want to hear, not what I think they want to hear. Major investment in staff development, as I mentioned. More measured view of M&A and collaboration opportunities. Really trying to understand where we can share. We've done a lot to share. We opened up all of our facilities to any nonprofit to use for free. All they have to do is give us a certificate of insurance. So anytime we're not using our space, we've opened it up. We've put together training programs for our staff that we share with other nonprofits to attend for free. We put together a mini, I'll call it finance class for nonprofits that with NDNU that they help support for free. We had about 15 of our staff and about 20 from other nonprofits attend. It was 3 different classes, educating folks on kind of nonprofit financials and how to manage nonprofits. We have another one coming up this coming fall for another 3 classes with NDNU that we'll be sharing with other nonprofits. So we're doing what we can to share what we have. More realistic expectations for timelines, goals, and deliverables. So I think a lot of my expectations were unrealistic given all the demands on daily jobs. And again, share what we have and collaborate where we can and keep forging ahead. And you know, at the end of the day, all great organizations are powered by great people. People who are motivated and feel that they're valued. And you know, while maybe I felt that I understood that, I think that this has been a very humbling job in understanding my own failings in really being a good listener. And I think as time goes on, for any young managers, I'd say that that's something worth investing in. Be a really good listener and really understand where people are coming from. And I feel fortunate that I've had a very forgiving team that's allowed me to adapt and change over the last couple of years. But again, it's about talented people doing work that they care about. And they are empowered by a strong vision of the future. And even though I mentioned the negatives about some of the challenges of being here in the Bay Area and operating here, I think we have a great story and a great mission. And you know, that is what I want to spend more time talking about, rather than all the challenges. Because guess what? Everybody's got challenges. The reality is we're here to serve others, and we want them to be empowered about us caring for what their future is going to look like. And I think all of us want to have purpose, right? Everybody wants to have purpose, no matter what job it is. We all want to be part of something bigger than ourselves. And we try to provide that not only for our teams, but also that's part of our story to the kids that we serve, the young adults we serve, and the adults, that everybody has purpose and meaning in our community, no matter who it is. And we want to make sure that they feel that and they do have those opportunities. We all experience failure, but it's about attitude that ultimately leads to success. And I think part of that for our teams overall is letting them know that it's okay to have something that may not work. Because sometimes out of that cutting room floor, you can piece together a pretty good story or film or whatever it is, product, and that we have to keep trying things and innovating, and some great stuff is going to come out of that. One of those projects that we did that took a while was we created a Grins and Giggles, which is a party program at our preschool in Burlingame, operated on Friday evening, Saturday, and Sunday. And it's designed for families with kids with special needs. So it's a party environment at our preschool site, which has all the equipment. We have a huge motor room, we have a bouncy house, so that they have a place to go that understands what the needs might be for their child, where they can invite their friends and neighbors, brothers and sisters to go have a great time and a wonderful party. That was an idea created by our team. Another one was, we call it Pathways. And we had adults start putting together a business plan. They created the marketing plan, the logo, the business, and created a coffee cart business. And now they go to every one of our events and are selling coffees and pastries that they created. But they designed that whole thing. Staff were in tears when they did the rollout of that program. And this is where we're talking about being good listeners. We were good listeners to hear what the folks that we serve wanted to do and what they were capable of, and empowering them to do it, versus seeing someone that maybe had a limitation or didn't have an ability. The reality is they had the ability, our job is to give them the opportunity to let it come to life. And so it's just wonderful to see those kind of things. So innovation is a big part of what we do. And ultimately, whatever you do, I think we're all in the people business, and never lose sight of that. And again, like I mentioned in the beginning, it has been very humbling at times, and also with that, the most rewarding and strong growth for me personally that I think I've ever had. The woman I took the reins from, who was the prior CEO, I've met with her multiple times. We get together every couple of months. The respect I have for what she did, she did an incredible job. Her name is Cheryl Young, lives in Half Moon Bay, still very active in the community. But wanted to make sure to give a shout out to her because she created an incredible foundation that I took over from her, but we wouldn't be where we were without her 25, 26 years of work in building that foundation. And as you all know, anybody who's been a boss, everybody thinks the boss knows everything and they can always do it, or doesn't know anything and they can do it better. The reality is, like I said, being in sort of that seat, just my respect for her has grown leaps and bounds, because I know how challenging it is and what an incredible job she did. And I just hope to carry that forward with what she had done. And we have a wonderful team of people. I can't tell you how, in fact, you've gotten to know Jen, one of our folks who works at our program in both Burlingame and Daly City. Amazing staff, amazing therapists, incredible preschool teachers, and adult program leads, community access folks. We're fortunate to be where we are. I think the Bay Area is a pretty unique place to have a community that cares a lot, and given the opportunity is willing to dive in wherever they see a chance to make a difference. And it starts with the team that we have.
I just wanted to interject just quickly my opportunity to volunteer at your organization. I've lived in the Bay Area for over 20 years, and I've volunteered at a lot of different organizations. And I don't know if it's driven by guilt or what, but I always feel like I've been given so much, I want to give something back. And so I found them on Volunteer Match, which is kind of like the dating website for finding volunteer opportunities. And I went in, I'd never worked with handicapped people. I love creative things, but I've never done anything in jewelry, but I just thought, what the heck, they need someone to teach a jewelry class, let me see what I can do. So I went in, went through the process to get up and running on a volunteer, and I work in their Millbrae office as a volunteer once a week and come in and teach this class or help teach it, and I cannot believe how much I get back from it. We think, oh, we're going to go give of ourselves or we're giving of our time or whatever, but what you get back from it is like tenfold. I mean, I walk in the room and they all go, Michelle's here, and I'm like, wow, where do you go where that happens, right? So they're like super excited to see you, and they're usually pretty up and excited, and they kind of have no cares. They're just like really an amazing group to work with. And the Gatepath has created this amazing opportunity for them. The facility I work at, we teach a jewelry class, but they also, in the next room, they're beating drums and, doing music. In another room, they're doing computers. In another room, like you said, they do videos and acting, and it's pretty amazing. And the handicaps really vary. They're just across the spectrum. But you get to know the people's names, the participants' names, and they are amazing. So, and don't be limited on what you can contribute, because there's always something that you can do.
So I didn't set Michelle up to do that. You can see the next slide. You can make a difference. So thank you. That was a perfect lead-in. And I know as a Rotarian that you all are already engaged in the community. And thank you for doing that and being involved. But there are also sorts of ways that you can make a difference. So thank you very much for your time this morning, and appreciate all that you do here in San Mateo County.
Thank you.